When people assemble in a group, a French psychologist called Emile Durkheim put it really well. He said there is a collective effervescence. We all get lifted in a group. We were made to be part of a bigger community. I've researched that in my book, The Bond, which was we were never meant to compete. That book was all about really refuting Darwin and saying, no, we were always made to connect. And when we connect, we thrive. When we compete, we die.
You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course, and Maxwell Leadership Certified Team Member, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some tips and techniques to advance yourself up next. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, where we got a whole wonderful host of authors sharing their wisdom, expertise to help you advance forward in life, especially to the business of immortality known as authorship. We got another super special, awesome human for you today, my friends. That's right, indeed. You're going to be in for a treat that's good enough to eat 21 times over, indeed. Some would say 28 times over, indeed, because today's wonderful guest, y'all, she is an international best-selling, award-winning author who is a mom, a wife, award-winning journalist, highly sought-after public speaker, known as the metaphysical rock star and the Madonna of the quantum world, and who is regularly featured as one of the world's top 100 most spiritually influential people. So let's give it up for the legendary and magical Lynne McTaggart. How you doing today, Lynne?
Hey, how you doing? Great to be with you.
It's great to have you here, indeed. It's right, indeed. It's like like years ago, finding professional development books and then coming across many famous luminaries, and it's like, oh wow, I get to actually talk to these people now. It's freaking amazing.
That's so great. That's so great. Good.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So my goodness, as with all introductions, well, actually, I'll modify this. So my goodness, so if you were to really describe your journey of your life from, I guess, from beginning to now in 3 words, what would they be and why?
Hijacked, interesting detour, that's 2 words, and enlightenment, I guess.
There you go. Hijacked indeed. I guess there was weed involved. Let me stop. Hijacked.
Well, hijacked, I'll tell you why hijacked, because I was minding my own business. I started out my career as an investigative reporter. That's what I did out of university. And my job was to put bad guys in jail as I saw it. And one of the biggest stories I did, an early story I did, was breaking a lot of international baby selling rings. And I had to pose as an unwed mother and then as a prospective adoptive parent. Remember, this is back in my 20s. And that's what I thought my life was going to be. But when I came over to the UK, which is where I live and have lived for more than I've lived in the States, even though I'm American, um, I started researching health and kept coming across fabulous studies of things like spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, if you can have a thought and send it to someone else and make them better with that thought, then that in itself undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set off trying to figure that out. And that ultimately became my book, The Field. And with each book, I had more questions. So after that, I wondered, well, what are thoughts? and they look like they're things, but not only things that, but things that affect other things. And so how far can we take that? And that led to the intention experiment, testing the power of thought with large groups of people, working with prestigious scientists around the world. And that one led on to the other books, The Power of Eight, shrinking that whole system down to just small groups of eight, and watching miraculous healings. So that's why I say hijacked, because my intention initially, starting out for my career, really took an enormous and very fulfilling and enlightening detour.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And definitely an enlightening detour because going through your work, it's like your investigative reporting background truly paid off with all the research and all the hard work you put into your books, just going through them. So, my goodness, how's that transition like back then to where you are now from the spiritual aspect? Because I'm pretty sure folks are probably giving you strange looks at first because, like, hey, let's go through a transformation here.
You betcha. Well, I think the act of writing that book, The Field, really changed the messenger. I mean, that desire for facts and research has never left me, and I have a natural skepticism. I'm not like your ordinary woo woo person in this field, because I tend to want to back everything else that I write about, everything I write about, with facts. And for instance, with The Power of Eight, when I first started putting people in small groups of eight or so, and this was back in 2008, and witnessing extraordinary healings. I mean, I've had two people get up out of their wheelchairs, one of whom was paralyzed from the neck down. I had just had a guy 2 weeks ago who was paralyzed on the right side, and one 10-minute intention, and that paralysis was gone. He had still been paralyzed from a terrible drug reaction, which was for trying to heal something in his spine. And it all went badly wrong. And he was getting better, but it wasn't, he was still stuck and had been stuck for 9 years. And one 10-minute intention, boom, he was healed. I've seen this kind of thing thousands of times now since 2008, but it took me 10 years to get up the courage to publish the book, The Power of Eight. I needed to understand it. I needed to dissect it. I needed to figure out why this is all happening, and also to define which situations make it work better. So that whole background came in very handy when trying to work out spirituality and also offer people real solutions in spirituality.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. And that really gives you an edge, really, just being able to take your time like that too, and making sure you back everything up with research for the skeptics out there. Because heck, even with the power of eight, and if I'm not mistaken, even I'm not sure if it was the preface of that one or the intention experiment where you alluded to like Jesus and the 12 disciples, where it's like you have to have a certain amount of people with just basically getting a group of people together with the same intention, which is really powerful. And it was just a wow moment for me when I read that. It's like, oh wow, this is freaking green right here.
Well, that's it. I was trying to figure out, I had witnessed these miraculous healings, and I started out just feeling my way with the power of eight. The reason I did it was I'd set up the intention experiment in 2007. And with that, what I do is every so often I will hold an experiment working with one of a number of prestigious scientists at particular universities like Penn State or Princeton or University of Arizona, University of California. I always pick people who are very credible at prestigious universities. They will help me set up the experiment. And then I invite my readers around the globe, or an audience if I'm doing it right in front of an audience I'm speaking in front of, and we'll do a 10-minute intention experiment together. And then the scientists will go away and measure the results. So we were doing that. We've done 40 of one of those, by the way, everything from trying to make seeds grow faster to purifying water to lowering violence in war-torn areas to healing people of things like post-traumatic stress disorder. Of those 37, of those 41, 37 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. Just to compare, there is no pharmaceutical drug out there with that kind of consistent track record. But when I started shrinking this all down in 2008, it was just another kind of experiment. I was running one of my early workshops on this subject, and I thought, well, let's see if we can do this in a workshop setting, but how do we shrink this down so it's just small groups? So I'm kicking it around and I'm talking to my husband and other staff members, and I say, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll put people in groups of 8 or so and have them send intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. And my husband is also a journalist and a very good headline writer. And he turned to me and he said, I love it, the power of 8. And that's how it got started. There wasn't anything I deliberately chose in the number 8. 8 has a lot of connotations. Like in China, it's a lucky number. It's a sideways infinity sign. So all of these things make it feel very important. In sacred geometry, it's very important. But for me, it was just maybe it wasn't an accident, but it seemed like an accident. And when we first did it, we thought it was going to be just a nice little feel-good effect, like getting your back rubbed. But it wasn't like that at all. It was extraordinary. The next day, after we had put people in groups, had them send intention to someone with a health challenge, we invited them back and said, okay, everybody who's had the intention, tell us how it was for you. And again, we thought, oh, good, mild feel-good effect. That wasn't it at all. We had a woman who had been limping badly from terrible knee arthritis who walked in normally after getting the intention. We had somebody else who said they suffered from depression, and they said it felt lifted that day. And somebody else with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, said my gut feels normal today. It feels good. And somebody else with cataracts who said they were 80% better. Her sight was 80% better. This was all shocking to us. So for me, it just launched me on more of an investigation. Every time I ran a workshop, every time I spoke in front of an audience, I would put people in groups of 8 or so and have them do the same, send intention to someone with a health challenge. And I was just speaking at an event in San Diego 2 weeks ago, and we had loads of people. The vast majority of the people who got sent intention had some sort of healing effect. They were out of pain. As I said, the guy who just healed his right side was just in one of these groups for 10 minutes for the first time, and it healed his paralysis. So when you talk about Jesus doing this, I was trying to look for antecedents. I figured I can't be the first person to have discovered this. So I started looking and looking, and I saw lots of ideas in various religions about having people pray in groups. But the most compelling to me was in the Bible, the Acts. Now, I read about a mistranslation or a poor translation that was from the original Hellenic Greek to English in the King James Version of the Bible. In the Acts, these were the instructions Jesus gave his apostles. And he basically said, when you pray, pray together, homothumadon. That was the Hellenic Greek. And what that means is passionately and with one voice. Almost think of a Beethoven symphony. But it got translated into English as pray with one accord. Now talk about an anemic translation, terrible. But what he was really talking about, and it's mentioned a number of times in that section of the Bible, the Acts, he basically said, when you pray together like that, you will heal and you will be healed. And that's exactly what we started seeing. So we didn't have groups of 12, like the 12 apostles. We had groups of 8 or so, but we were seeing healings in groups. And not only the recipients, but just as he said, you will heal. You yourself will heal. And we've seen this incredible mirror effect so that people engaging in this also heal. They are the healers themselves, get healed through some amazing rebound mirror effect.
That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be the mirror on the wall. The mirrors can be everywhere.
That's right. That's right.
That's right, indeed. It could be a healing house of mirrors.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And really powerful, too. So, my goodness. So, leading all these groups of 8, like, so basically a 10-year process to finally get the book out. So, were there any setbacks along the journey that actually propelled your book to success after going through all the experiments?
Well, I think, as you said, I think what I offered that usually isn't offered in this sector is proof, evidence. And I started the book by basically saying, I took a long time to do this book because I didn't believe one word, one bit of what I was witnessing, which is I was getting bombarded by miracles. Now, when this first happened, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I'm an investigative reporter. I don't belong here. I don't do healing. I'm not a healer. And yet I realized there were people healing. So I started trying to understand it. And there weren't any setbacks except my own feelings of inadequacy in understanding this. So that's why I had to delve and delve and delve. And I found there are several reasons why this works. There is, number one, a group effect. When people assemble in a group, a French psychologist called Emile Durkheim put it really well. He said there is a collective effervescence. We all get lifted in a group. We were made to be part of a bigger community. I've researched that in my book, The Bond, which was we were never meant to compete. That book was all about really refuting Darwin and saying, no, we were always made to connect. And when we connect, we thrive. When we compete, we die. So we were always meant to connect. So there is a group effect. There's an effect because it's an altruistic process. If there's a group of 8, 7/8 of the time, you're sending intention to someone else, and yet that is healing. And when I started looking into the science of altruism, I found altruism is essentially like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, healthier, happier lives. Altruistic behavior protects us against stroke, heart attack, even the common cold. We need to collect in community, and the more that we do for other people, the healthier we become. So, altruism, you see volunteers live longer, healthier, happier lives. So, there's altruism. But the biggest secret sauce here is a sense of oneness. When we did brainwave studies, I was so interested in trying to figure out why this is working. I worked with a team of neuroscientists from Life University. They put their neuroscientists at my disposal because they also were interested in Power of 8 groups. So we got 7 groups of 8 volunteers each from the student body. Almost all of them had never meditated before. They hadn't done anything like this. They certainly hadn't had a Power of 8 group. So we put an EEG cap measuring brain waves on one member of each group. And then we measured them. And the chief neuroscientist, Dr. Stephanie Sullivan, and I were pretty convinced we were going to see a brainwave signature identical to that of meditation. After all, people get into a kind of meditative state, but they're focusing very hard on that single thought at the same time. The brainwave signatures, we were shocked to find, look nothing like meditation. Meditation essentially slows down your brain, and it causes an increase in certain brain waves, or it can speed it up to a very, very fast state in real advanced meditators. But mostly people just go into what is called an alpha state. They have slower brain waves. That's not what was going on with these Power of Eight groups. What was happening is their brain waves were turning off. Certain parts of the brain involved in, first of all, in separateness, in helping us navigate through space. They sit toward the back of the head, and they're called the parietal lobes. They were turned way down. These are the brain waves that say, this is me, this is not me. They were dialed way down. So were the parts of the brain, like the right frontal lobes, involved in worry, doubt, negativity. They were also dialed way down. So these brainwave signatures look nothing like those of meditation. What they looked like, almost identical to, were brainwave signatures measured by Sufi masters during chanting and Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer, as measured by the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Andrew Newberg. So these were people in a state of ecstatic oneness. So that was the light bulb moment for me, because, people always ask me, how do I enter the field? And I always say, well, you don't have to enter through a door. You are the field. Your subatomic particles are having a little dance with all of the other energy particles and all of the things in all the universe. They're trading energy back and forth. We are all part of this giant quantum field. But we don't experience life like that. We experience life in total separation. We experience life as lonely creatures on a lonely planet in a lonely universe. But with Power of Eight groups, you get a sense of that ecstatic feeling of oneness. And that's exactly what people report back to me with the intention experiments and with my Power of Eight groups. They tell me repeatedly, I was crying uncontrollably. I felt enormous heat in my hands. Electricity went up and down my body. I felt tingling that was almost uncontrollable. Now, this is when they are in person with the Power of Eight group, but also on their own, sitting in front of a computer screen, as I am right now, being involved in a Power of Eight group that is on Zoom. So they're meeting virtually and they're getting the same experience. So what's connecting is brainwaves. What's connecting is souls. What is connecting fundamentally is energy over whatever distance. And that sense of oneness, we don't get to experience that, but we experience it in the Power of Eight group. And that, I think, is what is so transformational.
That's what I'm talking about. The transformational experience. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. The power of being together, y'all. That's right. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. Especially when it's a group of eight, a great group of eight, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Indeed. It was actually interesting you mentioned the brainwaves earlier, like the difference between when folks go into a meditative state. It's like, wow, it's actually amazing that you mentioned that. So, my goodness, so since you've basically been doing, I guess, 10,000 interviews over the years, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on the guest side of the microphone?
Sure. Thank you for that, Dom. I guess I'm always wanting to have people say, well, okay, so how do you do this? And what can I do to use this in my real life? So, to answer that, it's nothing like meditation. It's not like just sitting and closing your eyes and trying to not think. There's what I call 13 keys to intention mastery. So, to understand how intention worked, I studied all of the science of intention, and there's loads of science. There are loads and loads of studies called mind over matter studies in laboratories around the world where they've tested the power of thought to change things. And so I looked at what conditions work best in the laboratory, but I also looked at intention masters like Buddhist monks, Qigong masters, master healers, to find out what they did. And I put them together. I tried to look for the commonalities. Many of those people who are intention masters in different disciplines have particular types of modality, but they all have certain common threads. You know, there were certain practices they did that were common to all of them. So I took all of that together and assembled 13 keys. I also included in there what we'd noticed worked and or didn't work in our intention experiments. As I say, we've done 41 to date. Even lowering violence in war-torn or violent areas. And we've had amazing success. The other thing I was studying was what was going on with participants in my intention experiments. So since 2008, I have surveyed the participants to find out, how was that for you? And mainly it was at first to find out, were you able to get onto my webpage? You know, because at
Yeah.
first we were doing it on my website with my webmasters turning over the pages so everybody would be able to have the same experience at the same exact time. So I started out just asking the question, were you able to get on? Was it okay for you? But what came back for me were all of these comments, extraordinary comments saying, all of these physical effects, you know, I was tingling, I had unbearable heat, was crying uncontrollably, all of those things I mentioned. And remember, these were people participating individually from their computers, but they were still experiencing that effect. So I was looking also at what was happening to them. And I found that even though they were sending intention, let's say to lower violence in St. Louis, Missouri, we did that once, and we ended up in the very neighborhood we focused on, it experienced a 43% drop in violent crime compared to all of the other neighborhoods around it and St. Louis as a whole. But that was pretty amazing, but not the point of my story. The point of the story was what was going on with the participants. And first of all, about 40% say they experience more peace in their lives, more peace with all of their relationships. You know, they're getting along better with estranged partners or children. They're getting along better with their bosses, with their co-workers. But even more, about half each time with each experiment say, I feel more love for everyone I come into contact with. So there's this extraordinary peace that overwhelms them in being part of this, particularly the peace intention experiments. But also, about a third of the people experience some sort of physical healing. You know, I had a woman recently who has type 1 diabetes and found that her blood glucose was under control for the first time in years. Other people with terrible pain say, oh, I'm out of pain now, a bad pain in my right hip, and it's healed now, or it's better, whatever. So we have all of these extraordinary rebound effects. So I learned from there too. And one of the things that was really important that I teach in my classes and my master class, my year-long class, where I actually put people in groups and have them work with their groups for an hour a week for the whole year. So I put people in groups, and in my master class, one of the things I teach them is to be specific. That's probably the key thing. Most people think, oh, you don't want to tell the universe too much of what you want, or it'll limit what you really could get. I have never seen that happen. What I have seen is when we're not specific, it doesn't happen. So, for instance, when we just sent love to water in one experiment, the experiment didn't work. When we sent a thought, an intention, our intention is to increase the pH by at least 1 pH or more. It did. We increased the pH of the water, that is, its increased alkalinity as opposed to being more acidic. We increased it by an entire pH, which is big. So we found being specific counts. And a lot of people are very, very, very vague. They'll often say, well, my intention's to be rich. And when I delve down a bit and ask them about that, and I say, right, how much money do you want? Do you need 1 million, 5 million, 100 million, a billion? Do you need that money? Do you want that money? And they said, well, no, what I need is $25,000 to buy a new car, or I need $12,000 for my kids' schooling next year. So I said, well, ask for that. Ask for what you need and see what happens. And it's not like the universe is limited then. The universe wants to give you more. It will. That St. Louis intention experiment we did was to lower violence by at least 10% or more. And the more happened. It turned out to be 43%. But we specified, we told the universe what we wanted. So that's really important. But I think, Dom, what I also wanted to talk about is that intention isn't just for getting stuff. You can use intention in your life with your relationships. And that's one of the big things I teach in my year-long masterclass and many of my other courses is how to use intentions to get along with people, even people who disagree with everything you stand for, even people who are on the other side of the political fence or the other side of the COVID fence, anything like that. We're so polarized these days that it's probably the most important skill you can learn. But you can use intention, and I teach people to use intention to get along with anyone. And if you don't believe that, let me tell you about my intention experiment for Arabs and Israelis. Now, I ran this a few years ago, and I worked for this experiment with some really special equipment, enabling us to put cameras in 9 different locations. So we had 8 cameras, each one in a different conference room in a different Arab city and in a different Arab country. So we had cameras in cities in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, Oman, and so forth. And the 9th camera was in Jerusalem with an audience of Israeli Jews. So we had Arabs and Jews participating together on this intention experiment. And the equipment was very cool because I could speak to all of these groups together. They could also speak to me. If I called on them, their little box, like a Zoom box, except much larger, would show up and they could talk to everybody else and they could see everybody else. So everybody could talk to everyone in turn. So after we did the intention, which was for lowering violence in Jerusalem, there was part of the holy city, which really belongs to all religions, was undergoing a lot of violence. So we want to lower the violence there. And afterward, I asked the different groups, so how was that for you? And I called on people one by one. And I had to set up this whole experiment. I had to be the broker in between because the Arabs weren't talking to the Israelis. The Israelis hated the Arabs, and no one wanted to talk to anyone else. Even the leaders of their groups were really not interested in talking to the other side, so to speak. Afterward, it was like a total love fest. The Arabs were sending love to the Jews. The Jews were saying, your God is my God. They were all saying, it's enough. We need to get together, all of that. And I've seen this every time I've done this kind of an experiment. I did something else some years before that on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And for that, I invited Arabs and Americans. And by the end, the two sides were sending love to each other. They were, we were sending intention to lower violence in Afghanistan. The section we focused on had an unprecedented lowering of violence. But for me, the most interesting part of it was the Arabs and the Americans sending love to each other, forgiving each other, connecting again. So I think one of the really big important pieces here is using intention out there in the world. The other thing that I teach is how to pick up the thoughts of other people, because that's also, you want to understand their intentions so you can act appropriately, and how to pick that up. And the other thing is how to counter negativity, your own and everyone else's. Now, a lot of people think that I need to surround myself as a bubble, in a little psychic bubble, to protect myself from all of those bad thoughts coming from everyone else. But my answer to that is just this, Dom. Why would you want to put yourself in a bubble? If we're all one, if we're all part of this giant field together, why do you want to siphon yourself off? Why do you want to protect yourself away? And so I teach people instead how to stay strong no matter what's coming at them. And there's all kinds of intention techniques to do that too. So for any of your listeners, if you're interested in it, I'll be saying this at the end anyway, but lynnmctaggart.com, you can find out about all of the work that I've got. And the masterclass, as it happens, is kicking off February 17th. So if anyone's interested in working with me for a whole year on all of this and getting their own Power of Eight group, just check me out on lynnmctaggart.com.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about indeed. I'm talking about indeed. Good old unity. You love it when it happens. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. There's a lot of strife going on out there. And definitely a lot of polarization going on out there too. It's like, hey, you're either this or that. You're either with us or against us. It's like, oh God, relax. It's like tensions are high, but relax. My God, it's insane out there. But hey, sounds like good work is happening and good deeds are happening and good things are going to keep happening indeed. Well, fun question for you. If your fabulous book, The Power of Eight, Harnessing the Miraculous Energies of a Small Group to Heal Others, Your Life, and the World, if that book were a food, what would it be and why?
I think it would be, if that book were a food, I guess some of the stories in there would be a super vitamin pill. Or let's say it would be a really delicious and nourishing green drink. And the reason I say that is, we don't believe miracles can happen. And one of the things that I did in the book was to write about the stories of people who had actually gone through these processes in small group intention and what happened to them. And after I started discovering this, Dom, again, this is back in 2008 when I first discovered it, I was seeing this all over the place. And so around 2013, I think it was 2014, I thought to myself, what if I put people in groups for a whole year? I put them in groups, I taught them how to do intention, and I monitored them and I coached them through the year. Would everything in their life begin to heal? And that's when I started studying. I had my own little petri dish. I was studying the people who were on this course. There were about 250 of them, 270 of them for that. And I put them into groups. And as I say, we monitored every month what's going on with you and the rest of the group members. Any improvements? What did you want to change? And is it happening? And very quickly, we started noticing extraordinary changes. So I'll give you two examples because I wanted to know, would everything in their lives begin to heal? So I'll tell you about Mitchell Dean. Now, Mitchell Dean is a clinical psychologist. However, he had, from the time he was young, a suicidal depression. It would just overwhelm him. Now, that's not a good look for somebody who's supposed to heal other people with mental challenges. So he came to the course wanting to fix that. And he is an integrative specialist. So he had tried everything to his mind. There was nothing left to try. So his group did an intention with him. And as I say, I put people into groups in their time zone and really encourage everyone just to meet for an hour a week and take turns getting intentions. And so after they've had a lot of live and interactive conversations with me and training from me. So we did this with Mitchell. And Mitchell asked for an intention to find the source of his depression, because that had always eluded him. So they did this, and all of a sudden what popped into his head is, I wonder how my liver filtration systems are working. Now, why would you think of something like that? So we decided to go to a Chinese herbalist. He does that, and the herbalist says, hey, let's test to see what's happening with your liver filtration. They find out that one of them isn't working at all, and that is probably responsible for his depression. They work on that, they fix it, and lo and behold, his depression lifts completely. And those big super blue days were gone. But that wasn't the only thing that happened to Mitchell. Mitchell's Qigong practice started improving. He had writer's block because he had a whole program he wanted to write about that he had developed, and he just couldn't get anywhere with it. The words started flowing. He lost 15 pounds, and his trainer said, what's going on with you, man? You're training once a week, and you're putting on more muscle mass than I've ever seen before, and you've dropped 15 pounds. What's your secret, man? And he took up music again. He improved his relationships. His whole life began healing. And he felt, what was interesting is he said, I don't think it's like an allopathic thing of taking a vitamin pill or taking a medical, a bit of medicine. It wasn't like that. What he thought was the reason is you're giving and taking. So you get to be intended for, but you also can do the intending for someone else. He said, well, there was a woman in his group who was trying to have a baby and struggling. And he said, we were intending for her. And we started becoming really close friends, like an intention family. So if one of us was suffering, like he had insomnia one night, his friend in the group, Robert, said, don't worry, I got you covered. I intended for you last night. And that kind of thing, it just started creating those connections. And that's, I think, the great beauty of it. We had somebody else called Patty, and Patty had such bad chronic fatigue. She couldn't get, if she got out of bed to walk the dog for 10 minutes, that was an event. And then she'd have to go back and rest for the rest of the afternoon. Terrible chronic fatigue. She also had difficulty with her stepchildren. She had, I think it was 4 stepchildren. And while she had a wonderful relationship with the father, the stepchildren resented her because their mother had died very quickly, and it was very sad. So she wanted to improve her relationship with them and loads of other things. And she also found a lump in her breast. So her group intended, first of all, to melt that lump in her breast, and it did. Then they intended to find the cause of her chronic fatigue. And lo and behold, she was essentially compelled to get her dressing room checked out. And when they did, they found black mold all behind there and behind the bathroom. And that
Wow.
was the source of it. They cleaned that out. Her chronic fatigue lifted. I mean, within a week of cleaning it out, she was hiking and lifting weights. So she was healed, and it healed that relationship, the tricky relationship with her stepchildren and with her own stepmother, helped her create boundaries with her. So all of her life also began healing. And I saw this with all of the people in that first group, and that was my real petri dish. Of the 250, about 150 met religiously every week. And with that group, virtually 100% experienced major life transformations.
Ah, that's what I'm talking about. Indeed, that's what I'm talking about. Indeed. And heck, even with the power of eight, it sounds like it's just getting folks back to what we used to do before technology got a little too extra advanced and the pandemic forced folks to stay at their houses. It's just getting people back together because, like, there's a big loneliness epidemic and a lot of that when folks are by themselves. That's usually when darkness approaches in a way. And this is really another solution to help with that problem across the globe to get people back together and being human and connecting and communicating with each other too. And that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, Dom. You know what? I started calculating something about the ripple effects of this. So look at my intention experiments for a minute. We did several intention experiments, 3 of them to date, for Israel and Gaza at the moment. They're really suffering. I do a lot of informal intention experiments too when there's an area of where there's a war or famine or something like that. So we did 3 and 30,000 people participated. Now let's just do the math here. Remember, there's a rebound effect with 30,000 people, with anybody in the intention experiment, where their lives become more peaceful and they become more loving towards strangers. So imagine this for a minute. There are a variety of estimates of how many people each of us knows in our lives. Let's take 600. That is the top estimate that is been talked about with Columbia University most recently. So each of us knows 600 people. And there has been work by Harvard University showing that we have a ripple effect down a social network. For instance, when we're happy, we're more likely to have happy friends, not because we self-select happy people to be with, but because of the natural spread of happiness down a social network. Now, the same happens with negative stuff. If we're lonely, we're more likely to have lonely friends for the same reason, not because we self-select lonely people to be with, but because of the natural spread of loneliness. Now, they've also found generosity goes down a social network. So when we're kind, they say it goes 3 degrees down a social network. Watch this. If Peter is kind to Paul, Paul is more likely to be kind to Jane, who's more likely to be kind to Alice, who's more likely to be kind to Bob. And so it will proceed down that social network. So let's go back to our 30,000 people. If each of them gets affected by this intention experiment, and the people writing in, I had all kinds of amazing stories from them, as I always do, about more peace in their lives, making up with this son, making up with that partner, all of that, loving strangers, hugging strangers. So if all 30,000 of them know 600 people and they affect those 600 people in some way with this natural spread of love and hugging and happiness, etc., and peace, that will ultimately affect 1 billion people. 1 billion people. Do that 8 more times, and you've hit every single person on the planet. That's the extraordinary ripple effect of intention experiments. And that's what I'm starting to look at is, okay, how do we create a ripple effect of peace? How do we create a ripple effect of connection? And one other thing I'm doing is deliberately inviting polarized people to come together on intention experiments. Like I have one big one planned for Republicans and Democrats this next summer because it's right before an election and there's more anger about the election than ever before. So if we bring those both together and they do an intention for something else, what happens to them? Do they all start hugging and saying, your God is my God and your politics are my politics? It looks like it happens every time we do one with an intention experiment. So I'd love to see what happens there.
Woohoo! Sounds beautiful indeed. Sounds beautiful indeed. And sounds like something we need indeed. Well, definitely want to be respectful of your time. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow. Let's see. My advice would be become a spiritual activist. It really is important now, more important than ever. We are in a very different time from when I was 25. We are in a time of such upheaval in every direction. I would say find a way to be a spiritual activist and help other people, and also teach them the power of eight. And maybe if you taught it, this is me talking to me all those years ago, if you taught it all those years, for all of the years up until the age I am now, I wonder what would happen. I wonder if that would help to heal the world. And I would also say spread this information far and wide. It's really, really important. It's okay to be hijacked. More important than putting bad guys in jail is spreading love and peace through the world, because that is the more transformative activity and thing to do with your life.
Ooh, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That SNA doesn't stand for San Antonio, stands for spiritual activist, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. 'Cause spirit's powerful, y'all. It's important. It's important indeed. Mind, body, and spirit. Got to take care of all three, y'all. That's right, indeed. And help others to really, in a way, activate the power that they have within themselves, too. And the good news is we got an expert here who's been doing it for years indeed. And folks only got maybe, I don't know, 2% of what she has to offer. So for those who need to dive into the other 98% of what Lynne has to offer, and heck, even hop on to this magical experience that you got planned for the power of eight, what's the best way for folks to do so, Lynne?
Okay, thank you so much, Dom. To check out my website, lynnmctaggart.com, I have got loads of tools for people of any background, any purse, any any financial situation. We've got loads of free things there. Two, when you join, you get rudimentary stuff about how to do intention. You can join my community for free and you can create a Power of Eight group. Just put a sign there. And just basically say, hey, I'm in this time zone. I'm in the East Coast, and I'd like to get together with 7 other people and do the Power of Eight. If you want to learn from me, there are all kinds of things to do, with everything from the new science to simple courses on intention to my year-long masterclass, which is kicking off February 17th, and much more. And I also have all kinds of free tools for people who want to become spiritual activists in their neighborhood, how to use intention in your area to transform it. So it's all on lynnmctaggart.com. And of course, intention experiments are always free.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. That's right. Indeed. Lynn's got you covered on many fronts like a blanket, y'all, if not multiple blankets, y'all. Might even be able to build a giant cast with all the blankets she's got you covered with, y'all. That's right, indeed, because it's good stuff. And it's backed by research, too. That's right, indeed. It ain't just a random post on social media with a person talking like, nah, fam, this is the real deal. Holyfield, indeed. indeed. So we're going to put a link to all of our wonderful goods in the show notes. And let's see, the big program that starts on the 16th, is that going to be year long? Is it something that folks can hop on later in the year if someone comes across this interview 3 months after February?
My course, which kicks off on February 17th, the Power of Eight Intention Masterclass, kicks off then. If they show up a week later, all of the first 6 sessions are recorded. So I work with people in a live and interactive Zoom, and it's exercises there. People are working with me. My whole class is working with me, and I teach 6 2-hour sessions on Saturdays at let's see, it's 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. It's 10 to 12 Pacific, and everything else in between. So we do that. Then we put you in groups of 8 or so, and I give you all kinds of challenges and all kinds of things to do. We monitor it, and I meet you in intention clinics throughout the year. So if somebody were to come across it in July, for instance, it would make sense to take another one of my courses. I have more elementary courses, Intention Essentials. I've got courses for professionals, Become a Better Healer with the Power of Eight, a new science course for newbies in this area, all about the new science, and much, much more. So check it out. But yeah, the master class, it's a good idea to start off with me and let me carry you through the year.
Woohoo! Sweet. So that's good news for the late bloomers. That's right, indeed. Good news for the late bloomers. But hey, sign up before 17th. So that way the 17th happens. It's like, hey, I'm in. That's right, indeed. I'm in there like swimwear, indeed. But hey, there's still for those who may find this conversation later or any of our other interviews late, indeed. Well, any parting words before we close up shop, Lynne?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to understand you are far more powerful than you've been told. We have a sense of powerlessness now. All of us, we know the big guys in charge don't know what to do. We feel powerless with all of the things going on in the world of, the threat of war, the climate crisis, all of the kinds of things that we hear on the news every single day. I just want you to know that this power, which is usually denied by authority figures, is something you were born with. You just have to reacquaint yourself with it. But you truly have the power, and I've seen it tens of thousands of times now, to heal yourself, to heal each other, and to heal the world.
Thanks a bunch for tuning in and setting aside some of your time to listen to this wonderful podcast, Going North. If you really enjoyed what you heard, do me a solid and share this with your network and someone that you care about that would get something out of it too. And be sure to subscribe to hear more, and heck, even check out the backlog if you would like, because there are hundreds of episodes to choose from, and they just keep getting better and not butter.